What's up everyone, welcome to the video. So today I'm going to be going over my top 4 tips I have to maintaining muscle, maintaining strength while on a diet. I'm sure many of you have faced this problem before where you begin your diet phase, you've been dieting for a long period of time and a lot of your muscle and your strength gains go away. But today I'm going to show you how to solve that. So first, let's go ahead and move on to where you're going to be applying this first tip. So follow me right on this way. I'm going to be taking you right to that place. And here we are, the one and only place where the gains get created, the kitchen. Let's go ahead and move on to our first tip. So tip number 1 is you want to make sure you set an appropriate rate of weight loss. Anywhere from 0.5 to 1% pounds of body weight loss per week is acceptable. Now, if you're doing a much shorter diet, let's say a 4-week mini cut, you can push the rate up to 1.5% pounds of body weight loss per week because the diet is much shorter. But if you're sticking to a diet that's gonna be lasting for a couple months, stay within that 0.5 to 1% pounds of body weight range. And this is important because there's numerous studies that have shown that faster rates of weight loss cause faster rates of muscle loss. And as well, the leaner you get, the likelihood of muscle loss increases, and that's very important because we want to retain as much muscle as we can during a dieting phase because that's going to allow us to retain as much strength as possible, and we don't want to lose that strength that we obtained. Alright guys, so tip number 2 is you want to make sure you have adequate protein in your diet. Now, why is this so important? Well, on a diet, carbs and fats are much slower, so protein is going to be used as a fuel source more often. You want to make sure you have adequate protein to supply that fuel source. Secondly, muscle protein breakdown increases and muscle protein synthesis decreases. So in order to preserve lean muscle tissue, you want to make sure you have enough protein in your diet, and higher levels of protein have been shown to reduce the effects of muscle protein breakdown and increase muscle protein synthesis. So Dr. Eric Helms has recommended that a protein intake of 0.7 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight is a safe recommendation to make, and possibly even a higher recommendation of 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight might be even better because the higher protein intakes leads to higher levels of satiety and fullness. So in conclusion, you want to make sure you have adequate protein to preserve muscle mass, thus preserving strength. So now let's go ahead and move on to tip number 3. I'm going to take you guys to that place where you're going to apply those tips, and let's go. All right, here we are guys, we made it to the gym. So let's go ahead and talk about that third tip. So tip number 3 would be implement deloads into your training. So what is a deload, right? So basically what that is a week between blocks of training in which volume is reduced and intensity is reduced. And what that does essentially is it lets you recover from all those training stresses, all that fatigue that your body has generated over the previous block of training. So in this deload week, essentially what you do, I'm going to teach you basically all you have to do in order to implement a deload is you got to first reduce volume, right? And the way you do that is you take your total sets that you do for each muscle. So let's say in this case, you've been doing like 20 total sets targeting your chest, right? So now instead of doing all 20 sets on this week, you're gonna cut that right in half, doing only 10. It's gonna drastically reduce how much volume you're doing, right? It's gonna allow you to recover more. So you're gonna do that for each muscle. Second thing you're gonna do is you're gonna drop intensity for each lift. So the way you do that, you can do it 2 ways. You can either reduce the weight on the bar or on the exercise by 5 to 10% on every single lift. Or another way to do it, and I think this way is much simpler, is just reducing the rep goal. So let's say your rep goal for a specific exercise was 8 reps. Now just drop it down by 2 or 3 reps. So make it either 5 or 6 reps. And that's an easy way to reduce intensity. And by dropping volume and intensity, your fatigue is going to drop drastically in that 1 week, thus allowing you in the next block of training to continue performing at those high intensities. And remember, by performing at that high intensity, you're going to be able to retain that muscle mass that you generated from previous blocks of training, thus keeping your strength. And that's what we're focused on here, right? On the cut, maintaining the strength, maintaining our muscle mass, right? And so we don't want to lose that. It takes a lot more to build new muscle than it is to keep the muscle. So that leads me into my 4th tip for you guys, and that is make sure you're managing your training volume, okay? Make sure you're managing fatigue. So essentially what I mean is it's kind of similar to a deload, but instead you're managing your training volume within a block. And what I mean by that is, well, on a cut, your ability to recover is reduced, right? Because you're not taking in as many calories, you don't have as much carbs, you don't have as much fats that you're taking. So because of that, you can't recover as well as you did previously. And also don't forget that you're just leaner in general, you're a smaller body, you have less fat on you. So your storage of fuel is reduced a bit, right? So because of that, we want to make sure that we're reducing the amount of volume we're training within our training blocks. So what do I mean by that? So basically, let's say you were doing 15 sets for every single muscle each week across the board, right? Well, if you notice that within your training, as you start dieting longer, start getting leaner, start getting more shredded, start looking even better, you started to notice that you're stalling on your lifts, or that you're not improving, or maybe even getting worse, right? That's the worst thing that could happen. Well, once you hit that point, it's probably a good time, or even before you hit that point, if you feel like that's coming, it's probably a good time to start reducing how much training volume you're doing, okay? So an easy way to do that is usually by reducing it, only doing, let's say, about 2/3 of what you used to do. So let's say you were doing 15 sets targeting each muscle across the board. Now you're gonna do 10 sets targeting each muscle across the board, and that's gonna be your new training volume. And don't worry about losing potential muscle mass or strength, because guys, it takes a lot more work to build new muscle, but it doesn't take that much volume to maintain the muscle you currently have. And what's most important here is, because we're dropping down that volume, we're gonna be able to maintain high intensities with our workouts, which that's what's gonna lead us to retain that muscle, and that's gonna cause us to retain strength and possibly even getting stronger. A lot of times you find you get stronger while you're doing a cut because you take your training a lot more seriously now. You pay attention to these kind of things, such as managing fatigue, a lot more. And that's gonna cause you to be a lot more successful. And that's what I want for you guys, right? So that was my 4th tip. And let's go ahead and just sum it all up right here, what we discussed in this video. So tip number 1, right? That was, make sure we set an appropriate rate of weight loss, okay? So again, we want to stick within that 0.5 to 1% body weight loss per week. And if you're doing like a 4-week mini cut, then you can push it up higher to like 1.5. But if you're doing a longer diet, right, like you're doing 2 to 3 months, stay within that 0.5 to 1% range, and you're gonna see that your strength will not be going down, and that you're able to maintain the muscle mass that you have way more effectively. And then tip number 2, that was basically make sure you're eating enough protein, right? General recommendations is 0.7 to 1.1 grams of protein per pound of body weight, but honestly, I do recommend eating more protein. So I think anywhere from 1 to 1.2 grams of protein is perfect. I like staying at 1 grams, and as my weight starts dropping down, I'll keep adjusting my protein intake so it just matches my weight. And I find that works the best. And then our 3rd tip was to implement deloads, right? Which essentially is a week of training that allows us to reduce all that fatigue that we have generated over the previous block of training. And a simple way to implement the deloads was to just cut volume in half, so cut your total sets in half, and reduce intensity a bit. What I like to do is just reduce the rep target by 2 to 3 reps. And then finally, our last tip was just to manage your fatigue better, manage your volume better within the blocks of training. And essentially is, once you notice you start stalling or you're not recovering as well within the blocks of training, just drop the volume to only doing 2/3 of what you normally did. So for example, remember what I said, if you were doing 15 sets, you're now only gonna do 10 sets instead for every single exercise, and you're gonna find you're gonna recover much more better, and you're gonna maintain intensity higher. And by implementing all 4 of these tips, guys, you're gonna see that not only are you retaining muscle mass, but you're retaining strength. And trust me, you might even surprise yourself that you get even stronger while you're cutting, and honestly, that's the greatest feeling, guys. You know you're doing something right when that happens. And well, that's what's awesome about applying all this stuff, right? And don't worry if you didn't do this before, because trust me, I did not know any of this when I first started, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to teach you guys this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna wrap this up, and let me know what you guys want to see next. Yeah, I enjoyed talking about this stuff with you guys, and until next time, we'll see you in the next one. Woo, let's go.